We don't seek to rule this world. We seek to save it, to hand it over to a Dormammu who is the intent of all evolution.
This is Filmmasters. On this episode, we're making Kaecilius' eyes, the evil villain from Doctor Strange. Down below in the comment section is a download pack which contains his eyes that we'll be using for the tutorial. So let's get into that tutorial. Today we're going to be going through Kaecilius' eyes from Doctor Strange. So down below in the description area of this video is a downloadable pack, and in that downloadable pack we have Kaecilius' eyes and a few other elements that we'll be using for this tutorial. Now, one thing I used is Photoshop, and I went in there and I created some effects composites for you. And what happens is we've got the gray matter and the black matter and some color, obviously. Now, one thing when we're applying these type of layers to effects is the grays and the whites and the blacks all interpret on our timeline transparencies. So what we're going to be doing is using these transparencies of the black, whites and grays to show some depth of an image that isn't there. Obviously, we've got some color in there because in the movie, Kaecilius has those colors around his eyes, the blues and the pinks and the purples. So I've got all those and captured all those. Let's have a look at the other effects. We've got the nose bridge. So this part goes in between the eyes. Now the reason it's a separate layer is because each individual is different. So obviously my eyes might be wider than your eyes or vice versa. So applying these little extra elements is going to allow us to give us more freedom and movement in the effect. And we've also got an effect that's going to give some depth to the forehead and a scar. Now, I'm going to make some tutorials later on showing some different wound packs, and I'll be showing you how to actually make these yourself. And later on, I'll have a download pack which will have a series of different wounds that you can use for your short films and visual effects work. Now, it doesn't matter what color skin you are. It doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're white, and it doesn't matter if you're in between. It doesn't even matter if you've been out in the sun too long and got a sunburn. Because what happens with the way we're using these mats, it's going to interpret using the grays, the blacks and the whites, like I was saying before, as a transparency, and it's just going to simply show depth in your skin. So this tutorial is going to be able to show you how to apply these effects and give you a digital makeup. So I'm in Adobe's After Effects now, and in Adobe After Effects, we're going to be bringing in those elements, and we're going to be starting to do some motion tracking using MOCCA AE. Now, MOCCA AE came in Adobe's After Effects in CS6, and it's also in CC. It's a great tracking tool. If you don't have it, you can use the tracker. It may not give you the best results, but I'm going to show you, if you've got CS6 and further, I'm going to show you how you get some really great depth and tracking using that tool. So let's get into it. I'm going to first of all go into the project section. I'm going to open up the Kaecilius eye effect project files. Now, again, this is in the comment section, in the description area, I should say, in the video on this YouTube video that you're watching at the moment. And we're going to bring in all the elements except for this one here. This one here is an example. It's in the pack so that you can have a look at it and see what it looks like as a finished project. Now, I urge you, as always, go out there with your video camera, capture some basic movements of yourself just looking at the camera, maybe even talking to it, playing the part of this character, and then using these elements to track your own face and make the effect. But if you don't have that, or you don't have time to go out there, or if you just want to use a high resolution video, I do have one here, and we'll be using this video in this effect. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to select all the elements, holding the shift button down and selecting them, and select open. First of all, I'm going to drag my video down and make a brand new composition. And I'm just going to make sure it fits up to 100%. So there's me. We'll have a quick look at that. And all it is, I've got a basic movement and I'm looking at the camera. My eyes are blinking. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to go straight back to home. And the very first thing I'm going to do is going to go up to Layer, New, and we're going to go up and select Null Object. Once we've got the null object in there, I'm going to select and press enter. And I'm going to call this MOCCA, M-O-C-C-A, Tracker. Now this is where we're going to be putting our motion tracking information onto the timeline. So let's select our video. Let's go up to animation now. I'm going to come down to track in MOCCA AE. Now track in MOCCA AE is that free plugin that I'm talking about. I'm going to select it and it'll open up. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to call this Doctor Strange effect. And I'm going to leave everything else the same. With MOCCA AE, what happens is it interprets all the information. It interprets the frame rate. It interprets how many frames are in the actual video that we're tracking. It brings everything else in. And we won't be saving the project when we're finished. What we're going to be doing is taking out and exporting the tracking data. So let's select OK. So now that we've done that, we're going to have a look now at MOCCA AE and some of the functions of it. Up here we've got some of the tools. We can zoom in, for example. We can also have a look down here. We've got a timeline. So there's the very first frame, and over here we have the last frame. We've also got the play, stop and scrub buttons. We've also got our tracking buttons located here. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the image and look where we want to track from. So we can go straight to the end. I can go press this button here, for example, and you can see here, I'm looking directly at the camera, and let's have a look at the beginning of the video, and my head's off to the side a bit. Well, what I want to do is I want to track when my face is looking forward to the camera. So let's bring it straight to the very end. And that means when we start to track it, we will start tracking it backwards. So let's have a look. We'll set up our first track. I'm going to come up to this tool here. Now this tool is the Create X-Spline Layer tool. I'm going to select that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw around my face, but I'm also going to be drawing underneath my chin. Now the reason I'm doing that is I want MOCCA AE to not only figure out what I'm doing with my face, including the motion of my head turning, but I also want it to understand what isn't turning, so it can put a representation of what's actually going on. So let's go up here onto my forehead. I'm going to make the first selections. I'm going to come around to the side of my head now, down to my chin, and then I'm going to come out. I'm going to make what looks like a bit of a bow tie, and then I'm going to go around the rest of my face up to about here. Now once I've selected that, you can see it still wants to keep on selecting parts of the mask around my face. All you have to do is right click on your mouse button and it automatically finishes the selection. So now that we've done that, we can go in there and make some finer adjustments. We can move it around, for example. And if you have a look, if you grab this, you can bring it in a little bit. And what it does is it gives it a slight curvature to the corners, like so. So we'll do that on the corners of my face. Now you'll see here on the left-hand side at the moment there's a little preview window, and it's actually looking at pixels on my face. So that's what MOCCA is doing. It's looking at all these as tracking points for all the tracking data it's going to be selecting. Now I'm happy with the way everything is and the way it's set up. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select this button, and this is the Show Planar Surface. When we use this, it's not going to actually affect what we're tracking. But what it does is gives a visual representation of which direction the tracking motion data is selecting, showing which way my head is turning left and which way it is turning right. Now we can come up here and select the grid as well, and that's going to show us an even better representation. As you can see, when I'm moving it around, it's going to show different perspective of where the grid is. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try and make it so it's fairly straight and in perspective, looking directly at me like so. Now all I need to do is come down here and press the track backwards button. Again, we've gone to the very end of the clip. You can go anywhere in the clip itself, but I want this one. It's nice and simple, looking straight at the camera. And then we're going to start tracking backwards. Again, if you've got it set up and you start facing the camera at the very first shot, then use it at the front and then obviously track forward. We're going to start tracking backwards now. So you'll notice up the top right hand side, it's tracking layer 1, and this is our layer channel over here. It's also telling us how many frames we're tracking. So we're counting down in frames. So it's telling us what frame the tracker is on. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to speed up the camera so you can see what's going on. And then we're going to get into the capturing of the data and applying it to our effect. Okay, so now that MOCCA AE has finished doing the tracking, if we come here to the slider, you can see with the slider, when we move it around, you can see that the grid on my face is tracking to the perspective of which way my head is turning. And that is awesome. That's exactly what we're after. Now, if you're having problems with the tracker, you can come down here to minimum pixels percentage used, especially if you're a long way away from the camera. And you can use this little arrow, which is a circular arrow. And all you do is just go around it and it will increase it to, I would suggest, no more than 90 pixels. But for this demonstration, we're fairly close. Another one as well is you can press stabilize if you're wanting to have more of a track, if you're having issues with it. But again, with this tutorial, we're doing the basics of MOCCA AE. We'll get into more depth of this awesome tracking plugin a little bit later on to some other tutorials where we start playing around with some tricky work. But at the moment, all we need to do now is come down here where it says export tracking data. I'm going to make sure that I'm at the very beginning of the timeline. I'm going to come down and select export tracking data. And in the drop down, I'm going to come down. We've got different selections. I'm going to select After Effects Transform Data, which includes the anchor point, position, scale, and rotation. And all I'm going to do is select Copy to Clipboard. And it's now copied all the data that we need for our null object in After Effects. Now, if you want to save the data, and you can obviously press Save As. If we come down here, just press Save and save that data. But I'm going to make sure that we hit Copy to Clipboard. Now, if you're wanting to, let's say for example, in another tutorial, we will do something where we put a motion mask around a particular element, for example, eyes of somebody, and we can motion track those eyes, and then we can come down and export the shape data. But we'll do that in another tutorial when we start doing some zombies and stuff from The Walking Dead. So from now, all we have to do is just drop this down and go straight into After Effects, making sure at the very beginning of our timeline, I'm going to select the MOCCA tracker and press Ctrl V or go into Edit and Paste. So now that we've got all the MOCCA tracking data pasted here, I'm just going to simply press U on my keyboard to bring up all of the keyframes. So this is all the information that we have copied in from MOCCA AE. Now, one thing I want to do, I just want to unselect it so nothing is selected here and go into the anchor point and just uncheck that because we're not going to be using the anchor point anyway. So let's just hide that. So I'm going to bring it all back down and we're going to start applying some effects now to the image. So let's go first of all, and I'm going to apply the forehead mark. I'm going to apply that to the forehead. And I just want to bring the frames in a few where I'm facing forward. And I'm just going to move it in. Now, one thing we're going to do is going to come down to the transform mode. And we're going to change this to soft light. Now, you'll see when I zoom in, so I'm going to press Z and just zoom in to the image. You can see that there's a bit of a white coloration where the gray matte was. Now, one thing we want to do is remove that. And to do that, we're going to go up to Effect. And I'm going to come down to Color Correction. And I'm going to select Curves. And I'm going to come down here on the curves, right down the bottom and drag it down. And come up here and just move that down also enough so that fades away, as you can see. Now, if you have a look at the actual image itself, you can see it retains the nice scar-like tissue. So now that we've done that, we're going to apply it to our MOCCA tracker. So I'm going to grab it, I'm going to use the pick whip, select it, and add it to the MOCCA tracker null object. So if I move that around now, you'll see it moves with my face. Now you can see a very slight movement there. It looks like it's moving on the skin. To fix that, I'm going to come down to the toggle switches. I'm going to make it 3D. And I'm going to bring the actual image forward a little bit. Like so. And that will actually help improve that. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go down, I'm going to change this back to fit to 100%. And we're going to go back to our project window, and we're going to grab our left eye now. And I'm going to put that just on top of my eye, and I'm going to zoom in. And we're going to adjust this now, so I'm going to adjust the size of it. And you'll notice that the matte is black. Now the reason I made the matte pure black in the middle is when we go down to our toggle switch and get our transfer mode and change that to soft light, you'll see that it actually makes the blues in my eyes a darker color. So that's another way of changing our eye color as well and making it closer to the actual actor that was in the film. So I'm just going to adjust this now. Now you'll see also it's retained a lot of the information here in the matte. So we're giving that bump look to my face. Now I can change it to overlay and make adjustments if you're wanting to make the eye darker, but that's not what we're after in this tutorial. We're going to make it soft light. Now we're going to make some adjustments again. So I'm going to go up to effect. The last effect we used was curves. So I'm going to select that. And I'm just going to make some adjustments again. So around here, I'm going to use this to adjust it only ever so lightly, just to give it a nice look that we're happy with. So I've made a slight little S bend in the curves, as you can see. The next thing I'm going to do is going to get the pick whip, attach that to the Maca tracker again. I'm going to come down to toggle switches and I'm going to make this a 3D element. I'm going to come up here now to the rotation tool, select that. I'm going to rotate the Y-axis just a little bit and give it a little bit of perspective. So if I move my face now, you can see it's tracking to my face. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to now go to the project file, grab the right eye and do exactly the same. Now the good thing with MOCCA AE is it's done all the hard work for us. Now again, if you don't have MOCCA AE, because you don't have After Effects CS6, well, or CC, well, you can always use the tracker down here to track the face. It might be an idea to put motion tracking dots on your face if that's the case, to make it a little bit easier. But as you can see here, using MOCCA AE, it does allow us to get in there, and it really allows us to track our face in real time and allow us to apply these effects. So I'm going to come down here to toggle switches again and change that to soft light. It's going to reposition. And when I'm happy with that, I'm going to make that a 3D layer as well. Come up to the rotation tool, rotate the Y-axis a bit, and we can drag this out so it sits perfectly. And we're going to go up to effect again, curves. Come down here and adjust the curves. Just enough till we're happy with it. And then we're going to use the pick whip and select the Maca tracker once again. Now with Maca, obviously, you don't have to apply Doctor Strange effects. In fact, we'll be using Maca a little bit in some other tutorials when we start to make some other different variations of effects, as well as tracking background images and applying different effects to those as well. So last bit now is we're going to go up to project. I've made one. You don't have to put it in if you don't want to, but I've got the nose, which goes into the center. I'm going to come down to toggle switches, make that soft light also. Just position it till you're happy with where it's sitting. You might move the forehead mark up a little bit. Going to go back up to effect, curves once I've selected the nose PSD file. Make those same alterations to make those adjustments so we can blend the effect in. Now let me show you something. You can see some of it is overlapping on the corners there of the other effects. If we come up to curves and drop down where the RGB is and select alpha and make some adjustments there, you can see I'll just make some quick adjustments. You can see you can shrink the matte in that way. So this is a way of just making the matte shrink a little bit and feather it off so it blends in like we've got there. Select the pick whip again, attach it to Maca. Let's go back to fit up to 100%. We've now got our effect applied. I'm just going to run a RAM preview now. Now, as you can see, the effect is well tracked to the face. It's tracked with the turn. It's also got all the other elements attached. When we're blinking and moving, that all sticks as well. And that is because we've used that MOCCA plugin and it used that data and applied it to the effect. And so the end result is going to look like this. We can see it's well tracked to the face. It looks pretty good. It looks like the movie effects that was used. So all we need to do now is we're going to go up to File. I'm going to export and add to render queue. It's going to go down to the output mode. I'm going to change it to H.264. It's got no audio, so I'm not going to select audio. Select OK. I'm going to select the output. And I'm just going to call that Tutorial Project Video Fin for finish. Select Save. Select Render. And that's going to render out. And that's how we finish the tutorial.
And that is how we do the evil villain's eyes, Kaecilius from Doctor Strange. If you want to become a Filmmaster subby, it's pretty simple. You can subscribe to our channel. You can like us on Facebook and or on Twitter if you want to keep up to date with some of the updates and some of the early releases. And until next time, don't just film it, master it.